Well, I like making food that tastes good, and I don't even mind making food that tastes bad. But if I had to choose, I think I'd pick the former. So if you want to know how to make it a little bit better, but maybe not quite as good as it maybe could be, I think that you should listen to what I'm talking about. And if you learn a little something from this, well, I hope it served a purpose, and hey, that's what we're here for. Good. Welcome to the Cook Better podcast. My name is Corey, and if you know what that little intro, all right, is from, whose podcast that's from, leave me a comment and let me know. I think I might just start introducing you when I come on, just random other podcasts that I listen to and the way they, the way they open an episode. I don't know why, that just sounds kind of fun to me. I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and so it's just I normally say hello twice. I don't know why. I just did that the first time, and it feels kind of natural to me, and so I've kept up with that. But there are a lot of other podcasts out there that it just kind of fun, and we're having a good time. So that's what I might do. My name is Corey. I don't remember if I said that 5 seconds ago. I'm the host of the podcast here, and, I hope you had a good week. I hope you, tried cooking some new food and maybe did something I haven't done before. I say that I didn't really do anything too crazy this past week, but today we're going to talk about kitchen tools or kitchen gadgets. I mean, not so much gadgets, I guess. Gadgets seems kind of gimmicky, and I'm more thinking along the lines of just like what I would say is more essential type items in the kitchen, and some of them are ones that you might have to save up for. I had to save up for, and I didn't have them. There's been many years where I didn't have the certain items, and then, and I wish I did, but once I got them, I don't even remember how I did it without this item, whatever it might be, without this tool in the kitchen. And some of them might be ones, I've had a few different things where I've bought a cheap one just to see if I actually liked it or would use it. And I kind of see with anything. Now, if a lot of times that's the only option. I'm not buying cheap necessarily to see if I'm even going to use it. It's usually if I'm buying something cheap, it's because that's all I can afford to buy. I can't afford to spend a lot of money on the biggest and best. And most times you don't necessarily need the biggest and best anyway. But I'm usually not going cheap just because I don't want to spend the money. It's usually because I can't spend the money. And so, like with anything else, any other tool, I work construction, and I know that there's in a lot of cases, and not just tools, but all throughout life, you kind of get what you pay for. There are certain things that the name on the side means it's going to cost a little bit more, but it's usually still a very good quality product. I think you pay a lot for certain vehicles just to have a Mercedes and stuff. It's got a Mercedes logo on it. That's going to be an expensive vehicle no matter what type of car it is from Mercedes or model. But you do know that it's a vehicle that's built well. I don't know why I land on Mercedes, but it's, you know what I'm talking about. For me with tools, Hilti. Hilti is the, top of the line. They're very durable. They're good customer service, warranties, all that stuff, but they're can be very expensive. But if it's something you use every day, you want to invest in something that's going to last a long time. And that's why we use Hilti tools at work. Now, if you're just going to use a tool to put up a bookshelf, then buying a Ryobi drill from Home Depot is going to be perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. I don't it's just day in, day out. Maybe you want something a little more, if you're going to be using it, you're going to want something more durable. And that applies to all tools. And I would say what we use in the kitchen is definitely a tool. The pans and all the different equipment. So that's what I'd like to kind of talk about today. For me, my list of maybe, 10, 12 different items that I think are just kind of essential things or things that I use quite often. Before I get into that, I got to come up with like an intro song to get into my weekly meal thing. I won't make it a big, 20-minute talk this time on the meals I've made in the past week, and you might have absolutely no interest in it, maybe you do, but I just thought I'd go through just to give somebody an idea what I make for dinner the last week. Last week I had talked about, or the last episode I had went into a little more detail than I'll probably go into today, but it's always interesting to me to hear what other people are making for dinner. So I'm going through since the last time that I talked to you. The first night I did, one of the meals I made was fried onion and potatoes and eggs and toast. So used up some potatoes, some onions, fried them in a pan or in a skillet. And then I like poached eggs, so I made poached eggs and just had that on toast, kind of like breakfast for dinner. It's good, it's filling. In theory, eggs for dinner isn't that expensive of a meal, but I think we all know the price of eggs right now. It was not a cheap meal, but it was good. It's easy, it's simple, quick, and not that that's always a big deal for me, but that was meal number one. Number two, I made Sizzler steak burgers. And this was they say Sizzler on the package, and I bought them at Walmart. They're like real thin patties, and they sell them as, say, you can use them for a Philly cheesesteak or something like that. I personally would not use them for that because you want to use real steak for a Philly cheesesteak, or I do, but it might be good. I don't know. But they're very good. They're a little different than your just normal burger meat. They've got it's almost like there's ground beef inside, and then there's like a layer of meat on the outside of these Sizzler patties. But they're really good. And then I did I deep fried some French fries, and I had half a bag of frozen French fries from a meal a week before, and half a bag of tater tots. So I just deep fried both of those, a little salt. It was burgers and fries, basically, is what I had for dinner that night. That was night two. Night three, I made, I think this was Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. I smoked some chicken drumsticks, and I smoked quite a bit. We had people over, and so I had the smoker going in just a couple hours. Really good. I had brined the chicken overnight with a recipe I'd done before with some apple cider, some bay leaf, some honey, and salt and all that stuff. Really good smoked meat, and we had smoked chicken drumsticks, and then I had rice to go along with that. That was that meal. I'm missing a day somewhere. I don't know why, but then the next meal I made was something I'd never used before, so I guess I did do something new this week, and I had it's ditalini. I don't know I'm probably saying that way wrong. Ditalini pasta. Yeah, that's the way it's spelled, and it sounds in my mind anyway. And then I just took that, and I had some leftover smoked chicken. So I had pulled the chicken off the bone, and I had mushrooms that were going to go bad, so I minced those up really fine, or diced them up real fine. And then I diced up some onion and some garlic, and then I put a little butter olive oil in the pan, in like a saute pan, or whatever, a skillet pan, and kind of softened the onion. Those were translucent. I had like a medium-low heat, so nothing really burned, and had that mushroom and garlic. And then I had diced up, I had one jalapeno left over, two from before, so I just cut about half of that and minced that real small because the rest of my family doesn't really like a lot of spice. So I put like half a jalapeno, no seeds, diced really small. And then I just kind of sweat all that out and let the moisture in the onion and in the mushroom and in and the jalapeno, kind of a lot of that moisture go away. And then I put tomato paste, like a few tablespoons of tomato paste once the moisture had kind of gotten out of that, had sweated out. And then stirred that up. Now I got kind of a thick mushroom, onion, garlic, jalapeno paste with the tomato paste in there, and I let that cook on its own because you want to kind of cook that tomato paste a little bit, get some of that raw tomato flavor out of there. So just a couple of minutes on medium heat in with everything. Once that was in there, then I kind of deglazed the pan with some chicken stock, and then after that I poured my ditalini pasta in there, and then just kind of let that simmer and tried to cook that pasta. The pasta was raw, and if you've never seen it, it's like if somebody took a straw that you drink out of a cup with and chopped it up into little 1/4-inch long pieces. That's what it looked like. It's real small and really good. And this was my first time having it. Never had it before, but it was really good. And then once that kind of started to cook up, to get it close to al dente, then I poured, I don't know, maybe about a cup of heavy cream in with the pasta and the tomato sauce, and then a small can of tomato sauce as well, just straight up tomato sauce. And then after that was done, I that all cooked together, and I shaved some Parmesan cheese over top of it. It's fantastic. I did put the shredded chicken in there. It would have been even better with sausage, in all honesty, but I had this leftover chicken. I wanted to use it. But it would be a fantastic recipe with some Italian sausage. It would be, I think, way better. Or even, it would work well with like an andouille sausage maybe, or a kielbasa, something like that. It would work perfect in this recipe. And if you had some leftovers, you could throw some spinach in there. There's just a lot of things you could do. All the flavors are in there. That's kind of like the Italian flavors. They're all there. So you can really dump as much stuff as you want to in it. And I used a whole box, which is 1 pound of the pasta. And that ended up carrying us over the next day. We had the same thing for dinner. I don't typically like the same thing 2 days in a row, but this worked out great. And it was so good that even reheated. Now, when you reheat pasta, that pasta, as it cools down, and it kind of absorbs all the moisture that was in with the sauce. And I had let the sauce get pretty thick the first night anyway, but so it was a little more dry, but you could, if I didn't add anything more to it, I just accepted the fact that my pasta the next night is going to be a little bit more dry. But you could potentially, if you wanted to add a little bit of, maybe even just did some chicken stock, and then when you heat it up, just to break it up and loosen everything up, a little more moisture. But it was fine the second night, really good. And I just did the cheap version of garlic bread, just white bread. Little butter on it, little garlic powder, garlic salt, little onion powder, and that was so good. So that was 2 nights worth of meals on that. And then last night I made chicken fajitas, more chicken. Big on the chicken lately. It's just good, solid, and I just love chicken because it just goes with. You can do anything with chicken. I'd really like to get some more beef though. I haven't had beef in quite a while, so I might get into that, but that was my meals. That was my meals this last week. I didn't get into it enough to break down the dollar amounts. I could do that, at some point I might, but this time I didn't really get into it too much and, break down the meals. But nothing there was over in last week. Honestly, I think that the steak burger Sizzler meal was the most expensive, and that was just because I think those burgers were like $7 or $8, and then I got some lettuce and some tomato and onion at roughly, that's only around $2, but then buying hamburger buns and stuff, it was probably close to $15, $17 was maybe the most expensive dinner. And then, like I said before, when you start doing the math and subtracting out, as I only used, a third of an onion for the burgers, that's why I had onion left over for later in the week when I did the pasta dish. And then I still had a little bit of onion left over, enough anyway, for my fajitas. And same with the head of lettuce. I bought that and used it at the beginning of the week. Then yesterday, it was just going to get into the point where it's starting to go bad. Shred that up. That was great. Not necessarily something I had to have with my fajitas, but I had it in the house. And then I felt good this week about my use of the food in my refrigerator. I didn't have a lot of waste this week. And so that's another thing that I think would be an interesting thing to keep track of. And I'll probably start doing that too because I'm interested in weird things. But just to see what I bought, if you're buying stuff for the whole week anyway, like I typically do, what did I buy and did I use it all? Or what am I throwing away? Because food waste is a big problem. I say to my kids all the time on a zoomed in version, take, I have food on the table in a pan or whatever, and my daughter especially, she grabs more out of the pan and puts it on her plate than I know she's not going to eat it. I said, just take one scoop. If you eat that, you can grab a second scoop. There's no reason to load your plate up and then we're going to throw it away if you don't eat it all. So just eat a little, start with a little. If you want some more, you can have a second helping or whatever. And so I got to tell myself that too, because I'm opposite of what a lot of people say. A lot of people say don't shop for food when you're hungry, because then you'll buy more than you really need. And there's some truth to that, but I've found that I prefer to shop when I'm hungry, because then I get stuff that I'm actually going to eat, or I actually will have food in the house to eat. If I'm full, if we go out to dinner or something, or we eat dinner and then I go grocery shop, I don't want to buy anything. Nothing sounds good. So I'll come home with nowhere near what I really should. And then 2 days later, I don't have what I need to make a meal because nothing sounded good. So if that makes sense, I think you know what I'm saying. But it's just the waste thing. I'd like to keep track of what I waste and why. Now, the easy remedy to that, or maybe the most obvious remedy to that, would be buying a couple things for a meal, maybe 1 or 2 meals that you know you're going to do, and then the other meals maybe stop on the way home from work to the grocery store and pick up what you need for any additional meals throughout the week. Because for sure, we're going to have 2 or 3 meals that are planned out. But sometimes getting a full 6 days worth of meals planned out is not realistic. It's because something comes up, you got stuff going on with kids or school or work or whatever, and you miss a meal here or there. But I don't know. That's hard to do, to make a designated stop. And honestly, the only places on the way home from work for me are the more expensive grocery stores that I'd rather shop at a cheaper place depending on what I'm getting, and then just have that for the rest of the week. And that also kind of goes into the whole pantry staple discussion of what you keep on hand at all times, or what I keep on hand at all times, so that if I can't think of anything else, I know I've at least got these items that will make something. And that'll be a future episode too. But anyway, I guess we can finally now, after about 20 minutes, get into the topic that this episode is about. So, like I said in the beginning, I just today was thinking about doing a kitchen tools, kitchen gadgets, however you want to describe it, but just the items we use in the kitchen to make our food. So I'd say it's a tool. Everything we're using is a tool, but I think there's some obvious ones, like the handheld tools. I don't really have anything handheld tools like a spatula or a whisk or a measuring spoons. I think some of these things are obvious. Measuring spoons obviously is a big one. If you don't know what a cup or whatever, it might be okay for cooking, but you're going to be in trouble if you're going to do any baking. That stuff to me is more obvious. Now you can break down stuff that's nice to have when you can find it, or when you get to the point where you can buy some of the unnecessary but less need stuff and more want stuff, like an offset spatula, or a garlic press, or a potato ricer, or a lot more of the single designated tools. And those are the things that I think are more wants, because I can, if something only has one purpose, and it's to, then it's really like I don't know why, but I bought a lime juicer or whatever, and the thing works really well. It just is something that I don't often cut limes in half and then squeeze, but it's only got one purpose. So some of that stuff is not necessary, but makes your life easier if you got a place to store it and it's relatively inexpensive. A pastry cutter. You could probably think of multiple examples that would fit into that category. But I'm talking more big ticket items type of things. And I would say, so the only one I've got in here that's kind of I would say is a necessity but also kind of a handheld item is an instant read thermometer. And that's a big deal, mainly for meat. Now, they make candy thermometers that are a little different, but an instant read thermometer, I think, is an essential piece of equipment. And that's just because not so much, I guess, like with chicken, it tells you when your food is done, but it also makes sure you don't overcook your food. So an instant read thermometer is something that is definitely high up on the list of stuff. And I don't get invited to weddings. Everybody I know is married now, and there's so many people that are already living together before they're married, or they're single, and so they've collected all these items. But the next wedding I go to, whether it's on their gift registry or not, I'm going to be one of those annoying people. I'll get something on the registry, don't worry, but I'm also going to give a decent instant read thermometer because they're not crazy expensive. And you can get one from Amazon for, let's see, I found a cheaper one for $12, and they're going to be something that's probably not the most heavy-duty whatever, not a bunch of bells and whistles, but honestly, I just need something that's gonna read the temperature, and that's really all I need it for. So I don't know if I need, craziness on a meat thermometer. There are definitely, there's definitely things that are better to have accessories on, but I don't know what a meat thermometer could possibly have that would make maybe like built-in timers or some sort of notification or something like that. If you've got one that's like because they make them that have like a detachable probe that you can put in the meat if it's in the oven or in the smoker, and it'll tell you, alarm will go off when it reaches a set temperature or whatever. But on the high end, I found one from ThermalWorks for like $76.30. So if you got the big money, you want to spend it, go for it. I don't think it's necessary. Some features are great, but not worth all the craziness. But that's just the only kind of handheld item that I have that I think is a necessity. Again, not all these are necessities. Get what you can, whatever. One other thing that I find very helpful, but if you've listened to many episodes, you will know that it's not something I use often, but I do use it when whatever the situation calls for. Making potato chips, homemade potato chips is a big one, and that's a mandolin. They scare me to death. I always wonder if I'm going to have fingers left when I get done using it, but they're a very helpful tool. And if you're making a lot of something or making a lot of cuts, and it's always important to get as equal of a size as you can, or similar in size as you can, just for consistency in cooking. But it's not, you're cutting up onions, and if you're cooking them, it's great so that they're all kind of cooking at the same time. But again, it's not a necessity to have especially if you're going to be cooking them, for them all to be the exact same shape and size. Now, potato chips, it's a little better to maintain a thickness. And there's probably 100 other examples where maintaining thickness or consistent size is a big priority. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. But a mandolin's another good thing, and a relatively cheap. Now, this one seems a little more expensive to me. I found one on Amazon for $40, and the OXO brand at Target is $46. That seems like an expense, quite a different, or a higher dollar amount than I would think it would be, but that might be where they're at right now. I haven't bought them in a while. But if you are getting one and you're going to spend a little bit more money, the only thing that I don't have on mine that I would recommend looking for and would be worth a little bit extra coin to get is one that has an adjustable blade. And I've not used one, but I've seen them in other videos with people using them, and just being able to adjust the thickness on a single blade. Mine was a cheaper one, and it came with basically like 3 different thicknesses I could choose from, but I had to swap out the little thing with the blade to do that. And so that would be the only thing I would do different, or I would look for if I was getting a new one. But again, not that. Practice knife skills, and for most situations, you're going to be perfectly fine. So one of the biggest ones, and one that I actually received as a gift, actually both that I've had when we first got married, is a stand mixer. And I think when you think nowadays, if you think of a stand mixer, most home cooks, and myself included, when you think of one, your immediate thought is a KitchenAid mixer. And that's because KitchenAid makes like I don't know, I haven't used a different brand, but they make just such a nice product and a nice stand mixer that it's, one that everybody seems to use, at least home cooks. And they have so many accessories that you can buy to add on to just extend the use of that piece of equipment, that it's just really kind of the go-to one. Now, a KitchenAid stand mixer, those start at like $250. So that's, for me, for many, many years, that was not going to happen. One, I didn't do a ton of baking. Now I use my stand mixer for a lot of baking. I've been doing a lot more baking recently, cookies, breads, any kind of dough that you're making. There's just so many different applications. Just for the mixing part alone, you got the whisk attachment, so when you're making, you can make your own whipped cream. I did that last week for a dessert that I made, or 2 weeks ago. And but making a meringue or something, anything you would use a whisk for, I guess. Now, the first one, stand mixer I had, was one that I was given to me by my grandma, and that thing had probably, I don't know how long she had it. It was old. It was really old, but it was one of those things, and then it finally kind of burned up, and you feel bad about it, inheriting stuff from your grandparents, or even something passed down from your parents that they maybe have had for 30 years, because things are built rock solid. And then I have it for 10 years and it just dies. And you're not going to be able to find parts to repair it, even if you know how to repair it. And I had to get rid of it. But, she had it for so long, and then I get it and then it breaks. And so I don't know if that was misuse, or it was just I got it right before it was about to go anyway. I'm going to hope that was the case. But a stand mixer is something that just can be used for so many different things. And if you want to buy attachments, you can do a lot of different other things. But you can get a cheap one, relatively speaking, a Hamilton Beach stand mixer for $70. So $70, $250. If it's something you're not really going to use a lot, or are pretty sure you're not going to use a lot, then maybe go the cheaper route. Or if you're going to use it a lot and just can't afford $250, get the cheaper one. Obviously, any thrift stores you can go to, Goodwill, I mean, you can find so many things there if you just stop in regularly, and you might come across a really great deal. Is another way to do things. The other thing, the next item I would say is a blender. A blender is a great thing to have if you're making smoothies, or if you're making even a lot of sauces and salsas and different things like that, or making, if you're making, you do your own mayonnaise, or you could do a lot of things. And you can get a cheap blender from Black & Decker, makes one. Available at the Home Depot for $22.09, or you can buy a $130 Ninja on Amazon. It's all going to be how much you're using. If you're making margaritas every week and you need a blender that's going to chop up ice, then you're going to want to spend a little bit more money. If you're not chopping ice cubes, then a cheap one is going to do you fine. Maybe find one somewhere in the middle. That's usually a good way to do it. The other one here, now this next one is something that I am still waiting to upgrade, and that would be a food processor. I have got it's like a mini food processor. It holds maybe 2 cups of whatever, and I use a food processor maybe like every other week, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm crushing up cookies, if I'm making like a pie crust or a tart crust, crushing up Oreo cookies or crushing up graham crackers or any kind of cracker or something like that. That's really what I use my food processor for. The blades aren't insanely sharp. It's got 2 buttons. One says grind and the other says chop, I believe. And it's just the direction the blades spin, and you have to pick one or the other, and that's it. And so I don't really do a lot with that. But I do use it, and I would like to get a better one, and the reason being is, like, my mom did a lot of research before she got the one she got now, and I know that, like, with some of the better ones, there's a lot more options. You can get that slicing feature on some of them where you can, like, maybe put a potato in there or anything you would want to slice. And then that kind of eliminates the whole mandolin issue, because you can put that potato in there and slice vegetables or carrots or anything like that. And then they also, the nicer ones have like maybe a cheese grater attachment or something where you can have a little bit more liquid in there and not worry about it spilling. And that's something that like I said, I've just got a cheap one. I think the one I got came from Goodwill, and it was like $5 or something like that. And it does the trick. It technically works, kind of, so I haven't bought a new one, but it's something I would really like to upgrade. I just haven't bit the bullet and done that yet. But it's a great kitchen tool to invest in. I think it's something, if you're cooking a lot, once you start cooking a lot or baking, you're going to use it quite often. And you can make dough in it too. Mine is too small to actually make a dough unless I'm doing a very, very small loaf. It's just, you can't fit what you would need for flour and everything to make a good dough. Next thing that I got, now this one was more of a want, not necessarily a need, but it's turned into something that's been very useful and something that I've let other people borrow. And as I've mentioned before, I deer hunt. I don't get as many deer nearly as often as I would like to, but I don't like paying for processing. And for those of you who don't know, that's just the butchering and packaging of the venison. I do that myself. Do it right in my garage, cut it up, and then to send, for reference, to send a deer or when you bring one to a butcher to have it processed, it's somewhere around $1 a pound just for I shouldn't say it's not $1 a pound. I know that, like, the people I hunt with that do send them to somebody, it costs them about $130. And it all depends if you have, like, jerky made or all ground or what kind of cuts you want them to make sure to give you. But it's around $130 for one deer. So my wife, when I talked with her, we said, all right, next time I get a deer, I'll get a vacuum sealer. And that's where I'm leading to, if you didn't, I don't think I mentioned that yet, but a vacuum sealer, because then I can buy it. They're around, the one I got is kind of right in the middle and it's been a great one. It's not the cheapest model. It's not the most expensive model, but the one I got was $160. Now, you can find these at Best Buy or online for around $60, and that's going to be on the lower end. I think if you went to Target, there are some that are only like $30, and I really wouldn't recommend necessarily. I mean, maybe they're good. I shouldn't say that. I've never used them, but they just seem that they're kind of flimsy and they feel kind of cheap. But again, if that's all you can afford, that's, go for it. But so basically, for the cost of one time having a deer butchered and processed, I could buy my own vacuum sealer, I can butcher it myself, and then I can vacuum seal it, and it's paid for itself one-time use. And so that's what I did. And then now I've got it. When I used to buy, like, I'd buy chicken from Walmart or something like that, or anything, I'd get a bigger, like a 5-pound pack or a 10-pound pack of chicken breast. And then I could break it down, or burger for that matter. And then you can break it down into 1-pound packages, vacuum seal it yourself, and put it in the freezer, and it'll last a long time in the freezer. You get almost a year out of it. I don't know what they technically recommend. And so it's just a thing it's really, the whole purpose of it is to preserve things. But it makes it so you can buy something in bulk, break it down yourself, and freeze it. It's cheaper. And then now every year that if I get another deer, then it just that much more is the savings that I've done. I'm not now I've got zero cost in processing other than the bags, and they're not that expensive. You're not going to use that many bags with it. So I would recommend getting a vacuum sealer. Like I said, for me, that was on the want list, and I was finally able to get one of those. It just made sense financially when you started doing the math to do that. Now, I could have wrapped the deer in the venison in butcher paper and taped it up and put it in the freezer, but then the shelf life, so to speak, or the life in the freezer is a lot shorter with butcher paper. Now, if you're going to eat a lot of venison, you're going to eat it multiple times a week or whatever, you're going to go through it before that would go bad. But I think it's only like three, maybe 6 months. I could be wrong on that, but with the butcher paper, it's just not quite as durable and long lasting. So vacuum sealer. And along with that, this was like 2 years after I got the vacuum sealer that I finally kind of part of that whole process in processing an animal and butchering is I finally invested in a meat grinder. That's another want item, but something that's come in very handy. I didn't want to get the cheapest one. I didn't want to get the most expensive. I got one right in the middle that was right around $150. But a cheap one will be like $50 from somewhere, and you can get them if you want to go commercial grade, then you can go as expensive as you want. But you can get one that's going to work really well for about $300 as well. So I got somewhere in the middle, like I said, around $150 to $200 is what I spent on mine. Now, I use it when I'm processing deer, but I also use it if I want to make some meatballs or something like that, shredded or grind some chicken breast into, to make chicken meatballs, and then there's just a lot of different things that you can do with a meat grinder, and then you can. Depending on what kind you get, it can also have a stuffing attachment so you can make sausage with it. Mine honestly doesn't work that well for that, but it's an option depending on what you get. So a meat grinder, not a necessity, but again, something that's really nice to have if it's something you're interested in, or potentially interested in getting. Next item would be a deep fryer. I love my deep fryer. I use it a lot, or more in the summer than in the winter, because my wife really doesn't like me deep frying foods in the house. She doesn't. If you've ever done that, you know that your house for 2 days smells like used oil or cooking oil. So I do it in the garage, which in Michigan means that it's cold during the winter months. And so really I don't use it a ton during the winter, but it's something that I do use quite often during the summer. Anything that you're going to make with a in the deep fryer is going to taste fantastic. I like the deep fryer for especially like French fries, obviously, and I do a lot of if I'm making appetizers to go along with a meal or something, I'll do like a deep fried pickle wraps, which has a wonton wrap or egg roll wrapper, and then I've got ham, pickle, cream cheese, maybe some bacon in there with that, and then I will wrap that up in the egg roll wrapper and deep fry it and dip it in some ranch. Oh man, that's some good eating right there. But or doing like with a wonton wrapper, making crab rangoon if I'm doing an Asian dish and I want that as kind of a side, I'll use deep fryer for that. Or if you're making like taquitos, homemade taquitos, or was it flautas, where you just roll up a tortilla with a little meat and cheese or some beans and cheese, roll it real tight in a corn tortilla or something, and then drop it in the deep fryer. And there's just so many different things. And homemade potato chips. I love if I'm doing the meat on the grill or something during the summer, I'll make these either homemade potato chips or sweet potato chips. Slice them potatoes really thin, let them soak in water for like a half hour, 45 minutes to remove some of that starch, and then drop them in the deep fryer. Fantastic. And so these are all things that a deep fryer is. I joke around and say I like to wet fry my stuff. I don't air fry my food. And I say that air fryer is something that's kind of on this list. I don't own an air fryer. It's not something that I've just felt like I needed to spend the money on. I'm sure everybody I've talked to that has them anyway seems to like them. It's just not, I just don't need another appliance at the moment. I'd love to try one. If somebody gave me one, I'm sure I would use it. It's just something at the moment that I feel is unnecessary for me. Now, a lot of people like them. And obviously, it's going to be a healthier option than deep frying. And I think that's the big appeal for a lot of people. And you don't get that oil smell. So I guess there is a couple of reasons why I would like to try it. And I've heard like reheating pizza in an air fryer and stuff is great. I'm sure there's a lot of good uses for it. It's just not something I've have any real experience with. But like I said, everybody that I've talked to really likes them. So in an air fryer, you can get a cheap one for around $90, and you can get like the Emeril Lagasse one on Amazon that's about $200. You could also, for the deep fryer, a cheap deep fryer is about $70, and anywhere from $70 to $120 will get you a home cook size deep fryer. I am saving up. There's one that's a commercial. It's a 2-basket type of situation that I would really like to get. That one's like $150, $170. Not a necessity, though, so that's kind of on the back burner, maybe a someday type of a purchase. But the deep fryer itself, I use that quite often in cooking. And so do restaurants. If we're trying to make stuff taste like what you're having at a restaurant, you want it to be a little healthier, and so in some ways an air fryer would be better. But if you're looking to match flavor for flavor, they're using deep fryers. At least I don't know about many restaurants that are using air fryers. I'm sure there are some. But it's not like restaurants come tell me what they're using. So I'm sure there's more out there than I realize, but I know for sure there's a lot of them that use deep fryers, though. That is for sure. Let's see. I'm getting down to it. These are kind of the things here. A tortilla press. That might seem like a weird one to a lot of people, but I really enjoy using my tortilla press, and I like it. It makes it feel like when I'm making corn tortillas or I'm doing something, any kind of tacos or making, really that's what a tortilla press is for, is pretty much only tortillas, but one of those single-purpose tools that I talked about earlier. But it's just I just like a homemade corn tortilla. It just is so good, and I have tacos so often that it's a worthwhile investment for me, and it's not a big investment at all. You can buy them. Now, if you want to get a real high-end, like anything, people will let you spend as much money as you want, but a really expensive one is like $70. The one I own, I think, cost $18, and I got it from Target. Now, I will say that I would really like to replace the $18 one I got. This was one where it was cheap enough that I thought I'll try, and even the more expensive ones aren't crazy expensive, but I bought a cheap one, seeing how often I would use it. I do use it quite a bit, so I would like to upgrade, but even the upgrade isn't a crazy amount of money. So I would recommend it. Making your own tortillas is really good. They're more filling than the store-bought ones. They're not you don't have any sugar added, and so I just like them a lot. They're really a worthwhile investment for me. And then the last thing that I have, I'm sure I'm missing some other things, would be a Dutch oven. A decent Dutch oven. You don't have to go crazy. I didn't go crazy. I think the one that I have was a $60 pot, and that was a hard purchase for me. It just seemed like a lot of money to spend on. It's a cast iron enameled Dutch oven. And then, if you believe it or not, my grandma gave me one like a year and a half later. That's the exact same as the one I've got, but it's great. And it's I don't know if it's a 6-quart or an 8-quart. It's a bigger one, but it's a pot that I use quite often. Anytime I make soup, I use the Dutch oven. And if I'm making a spaghetti or a pasta sauce or spaghetti sauce, or any tomato sauce of any kind, it's just great. The cast iron, the enamel kind of keeps it relatively nonstick, and it can go in the oven to just let something continue to cook. If you're braising meat or doing a roast or anything like that, it just works so good for so many different things. And so making chili, you can just think of anything you would have in a pot, I suppose, but a decent Dutch oven pan. Bread, almost forgot about bread. Made quite a few Dutch oven breads. So it's just a very versatile, I don't know what you call it, pot, tool, and that's not an appliance, but thing to the kitchen. That one I would put closer to the necessity list, because you need, if you're ever going to make any soup or make some stock or anything like that, you need a pot you need something to put it in. You're going to have to buy a pot anyway. The only caveat to that is that a Dutch oven is a little bit more expensive. So if you can't afford it, then it's something that's definitely worth saving up for. And that's what it was for my case. I didn't have one for about 8 years, and then finally I was like, all right, I'm going to break down and buy one, and we did, and it's something that I've used quite a bit. And I do like when I see somebody's Dutch oven that's kind of discolored on the inside, or that gets used a lot, and mine's starting to it might not be the prettiest thing in the world, but that's because it gets used, and that tells me right there that it's a worthwhile investment. And that's the case for a lot of stuff. I want to take care of everything I have, but some stuff just breaks down from wear, and then and when you see that, it's like, okay, this is something I used, because it wasn't from negligence. It was just from normal wear and tear, and that's why it looks the way it does. But I guess that's kind of it for what I had. I'm sure I'll think of something in about a half hour that I didn't think of before. I got a stand mixer, blender, food processor, vacuum sealer, meat grinder, deep fryer, air fryer, mandolin, tortilla press, instant read thermometer, and a Dutch oven. There's a lot of goofy things that I've got in my drawer at home that are gimmicky type stuff, and some of them are kind of cool. I would love someday to get like a mortar and pestle for grinding spices and doing things like that. And it all kind of depends. All that kind of stuff, along with the tortilla press, is when you're starting to get into the making things homemade, more authentic, from scratch, and that you start to get into the more of the cultural tools, I would say, like a pasta machine. It might be called a pasta machine. It just doesn't sound right in my head for now. I did buy one of those. It was a very cheap one, and it didn't work well. And so I think I need to get something a little better for that. Sorry about that. I don't know what exactly just happened there. If it cut out, it might not even come through on the audio. I don't know. I'm trying to get better. I apologize for the bad times I've had some audio issues. But yeah, the pasta roller maker thing that I had, I bought a cheap one. It wasn't the greatest. But hey, it was worth a try, and I enjoyed. I would like to get a that's another one on the want list. But again, I was making pasta from scratch and stuff like that. When you get more into specific things like that you gotta get different tools. Now, you can make pasta by rolling it out with a rolling pin. It's just hard to get it as thin as you would like to. It's not near as easy as the roller. So I don't know. It's just a lot of items. There's so many different things that are great depending on what you cook a lot. For like, if you don't make tacos very often, a tortilla press isn't worth the investment. Now, if you want to start doing it more, great. I eat pasta a fair amount, but I buy it as way more often than I make it. So then purchasing, for me, a tortilla or pasta maker or whatever you call it is not really worth the investment. And that's at the moment why I haven't bought another one. Anyway, let me know what you use that you really like. Let me know in the comments. shoot me an email, thecookbetterpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear what's a kitchen tool that you use a lot that's something that you wouldn't really want to live without, or something that you bought that you didn't know if it was something worth the investment, but turns out it worked out great, or maybe even something that you use that's not worth the hassle, not worth the time, not worth the money. Yeah, thanks for listening. I hope that this maybe swayed somebody one way or another if they're on the fence about a certain thing I was talking about. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time on the Cook Better Podcast.